Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. Thank you for joining me to explore the world of self-service portals. I'm Phil Binko, CEO of Financial Operations Networks, and today we're going to discuss what are self-service portals. What are the keys to good customer service for vendors and internal customers, and what are the factors to consider? We're going to take a look at the query processes, the cost of queries, the value and the use of portals, and a brief example of the Supplier IQ portal, and we're going to end with questions if I have been fortunate enough and good enough to have held your attention for the next 25 minutes. So the very first question is, what are self-service portals and why do we want them? And two questions. Well, self-service portals are online places where someone can go to get or give information or get or give documents. The second question is, why do we want them? And that's what we're going to answer over the next 20 to 25 minutes. So at this point, I think it's good to ask, what do vendors and internal customers want? Well, they want timeliness. They want things now. We live in a world of instant gratification, and 5 minutes from now, oftentimes, just isn't good enough. Our customers want accuracy. Many, if not all of the time, the information that an inquirer is seeking is not for their own use, but it's going to be given back to somebody else. If it's an internal customer, it's going to be given back to a supplier or the supplier salesman. If it's a vendor, it's probably going somewhere up the chain to report back to management. They want to get the information, they want to get it right, and they want to get it right the first time so they don't have to come back. They don't have to have the risk of being embarrassed by giving someone incorrect information and data. People want convenience. They want it to be easy. Not only do we live in a world of instant gratification, but we live in a point-and-click world where everybody's looking for an easy button. There's so many things to do, so many activities, and so many processes that folks just want to simplify their lives. And, of course, it has to be cost-effective. Let's face it, I think today we're all a lot more cost-conscious than ever before. Some of the factors to consider in servicing our customers include really fostering good relationships, both internally and externally. Good relationships are more pleasant, they're less expensive, they move more smoothly, and they certainly foster an environment that is more forgiving when something goes awry. And we know at some point something is going to go awry, something is going to go wrong. In order to implement these factors and deliver good customer service, we need to consider the perceptions of the customer. What is the vendor's perception? Well, vendors they supply a good and they supply a service, but they're also extenders of credit. And with that role of an extender of credit comes certain rights and expectations. Our internal customers have a perception also, even if that perception is and may often be them asking themselves the question, why do I have to do this? Why am I actually doing this inquiry? From the vendor's point of view, vendors are getting more and more sophisticated in evaluating the cost of an entire relationship with their customers. Certainly our more sophisticated vendors are doing that. And part of that has to do with the cost of collections, the speed at which money comes in, and the internal cost of dealing with their customers. And those costs can really be taken into account where the vendor is using them to calculate the prices that they give or the terms that they extend, either better or worse on both of them. On the AP side, there's also reputation risk, and then there's also reputation management. When according to an Accounts Payable Network benchmark survey in August, when internal customers and vendors contact AP, in most cases, they're calling about the same thing, late payments. But the second most common complaint of vendors is that they have no visibility into the status of their invoices and their payments. It's amazing, but with the internet and with apps and with online, visibility of payment status has actually become an expectation of many of our suppliers. So what actually goes on in this query process? Well, on the vendor side, they review open accounts receivable. Somebody, a collector or a salesperson, they take a look at the customer history. Most of the time, they're responding to internal pressure from their managers to speed collections and get cash in the door. All they hear once the sale is made is cash is king, cash is king. They will compose and send emails if they see something that they think should be collected. They'll wait for the answers to those emails. They may send a fax. Not too much anymore. When they get an answer, they may or may not respond to the answer, depending on what the answer is and whether it's favorable or whether they feel further clarification is necessary. They may call their customer, and they might get somebody and talk with them, or they might leave a voicemail, in which case they'll be waiting for answers. Well, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of pieces, and these folks are talking to a lot of people all day long or sending emails all day long. But as all these little steps occur, we see that it's inefficient, it's labor-intensive, it's time-consuming for the vendor. What about our internal customer? Our internal customer probably doesn't really care what's going on until they receive a call from somebody or an email from somebody like the vendor. And it could be from the sales rep, or it can be from a vendor collections person, at which time our internal customers will compose and send an email to AP. They'll wait for answers. They'll respond to the answers if necessary. They'll contact the vendor once they get the answer with the answers, or they may call AP, talk to them, and leave a voicemail, in which case they'll wait for answers and then contact the vendor with the answers. Interesting point, in the same Tappan survey from August, some companies' internal customers make up nearly half of the inquiries that they get. Like the vendor's query process, our internal customers' process is also inefficient and is also time-consuming. And while all this is happening, what's going on in AP? Well, AP receives invoices. We process the invoices and we process the payments. We receive and we review both the vendors and the internal customers' emails. We answer those emails, or we may take calls and respond to vendors and internal customers' calls or voicemails. Often, particularly if it's a call, well, maybe not often, but it seems like it might be often, we may be talking with somebody who is very difficult. We've all had these kind of conversations where literally someone on the other end of the line might be hollering at us. This is disruptive, and for a lot of people, it can take hours, and that's in lost productivity, just to recover from an unpleasant conversation. Now, I didn't put up a slide for this, but this particular process is also time-consuming and is also maybe not the most efficient way to go about answering queries. So it has a cost as well. And what is that cost? Well, the cost includes research for the research of the answer, understanding the problem to begin with, researching it, responding to it, following up, possibly, depending on the organization structure in your company or organization, it could be disruption to workflow and to somebody's rhythm. This was also from the Tappan survey, most accounts payable departments do not have a dedicated customer service response team. Maybe it's not cost justified to do that, or maybe it requires a process of reorganization that isn't timely at this particular point. There's also a cost of the impact of morale on our employees, depending on the personalities of the inquirers when we're dealing with those very difficult people, and that has a cost and a productivity cost associated with it too. So how do we go about measuring this cost? Well, here's a very simple formula. What we found is that including the research of the answer to a problem or a query and follow-up queries and the response, a query can take anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes. The average cost per hour can range, on average, $14 to $32. This may not apply to your organization, but most people are in that range. And we can calculate the total direct cost by taking the time per query in units of an hour times the cost per hour times the number of queries per day times 250 work days a year, unless you're open 365, and that would make a little bit of a difference, but most are not. That would give us our annual direct cost per query. So an example here would be just on queries that are average of 6 minutes long at the lower end, $14, 25 queries a day, our direct cost, not including benefits, taxes, etc., is $8,750 a year. So how does all of this relate to self-service portals? Well, portals have a high degree of the things that our customers, both internal and external, want. It provides a very high degree of timeliness. The vendor or our internal customer can get instant answers. Accuracy is assured because it's coming right out of our system, assuming the information in the system is correct, of course. It's highly convenient because it's all online, and it's very cost-effective because it's self-service. The inquirer does all of the work, and it actually connotes a higher level of customer focus and customer service. The portal can be used for other things as well. Vendor onboarding forms can be put up that vendors can fill out. Policies can be disseminated. Invoices can be uploaded, and even invoices entered into an invoice template. It can provide customer reporting, which we'll talk about in a second. And all of this works to facilitate high levels of customer management and vendor management. So at this point, what I'd like to do, and then we'll open this up for questions in just a few minutes, is just walk you through an actual example of vendor portal. This one happens to be Supplier IQ. What you're looking at right now is a sample of a screen that a vendor or an internal customer might see. There is a place to enter a vendor number, a purchase order number, an invoice number, an invoice date, and the invoice amount. There's also an interesting place for check number. I'll digress for 1 second. Sometimes a vendor may get a check and they won't know what invoices are covered by that check. So with a portal, the vendor can enter the check number, and all of the invoices on that check can actually be displayed, so they can see how to apply that particular payment if it's a check. The vendor enters information following the instructions. Then they get answers. So at the bottom of the screen, after the inquirer enters the information, we have the display. And this particular display shows the PO number, if there is one, the invoice number, the invoice date, the invoice amount, the currency, the status, the check number, the check issue date, the payment amount, the check status, the check clear date, and the vendor number. The information that's displayed can be tailored to fit any particular customer's needs. More information can be displayed, or less information can be displayed. Additional fields can be displayed, such as if there's a short pay, the amount of the short pay. You can also include the reason for the short pay if you want. In addition to that, inquirers can also query on a range of dates. They can also download a query if it is, say, on a range of dates, into a CSV file or into an Excel file. The system can also generate helpful management reports. These would include usage reports, logs of all of the inquirers and all of the inquiries. You can see what kind of inquiries are being made, who's using the system, what they're using the system for. This will help you track the effectiveness of the portal and its impact on reducing the number of inquiries that are actually coming into accounts payable. We've seen these programs with over a 5 to 8 month period reduce the number of inquiries coming into AP by 80 to 85%. AP will still get some calls because there will be some information that really isn't or can't be answered by the inquirer, by the system. There might be an invoice that isn't in the system that the inquirer thinks should be in the system. Maybe they did not send the bill to AP. They sent it to somebody else, and it hasn't worked around to get into accounts payable yet through workflow. At this point, I would like to just open up the floor. Wendy, can you open up the floor? I think we're ready for some questions.
I sure can, Phil. Thank you, everybody. We have one here that says, how much does service cost and how is security assured?
Sure. A service like this, like Supplier IQ, is based on the number of vendors, the number of invoices. It can range, from small up to very large, but I hate to throw out costs because at the low end everybody wants to be there and nobody wants to be at the high end. But you could be looking in the neighborhood of $6,000 to $7,000 a year, up to many times that. So if it's something that you'd like to get a firmer understanding of, if you'll shoot me an email and my contact information is there, let me know the number of invoices you have a year, the number of vendors who you regularly work with, then I'd be happy to give you a kind of an estimate. The system is secure, very secure. If you'll notice, just on the display screens, there is nothing in the display that identifies you. There's nothing that identifies who the supplier is. There's nothing that identifies what it is that you bought. There really isn't any line item detail that's been displayed. There's nothing about pricing in there because it's entire invoice amounts. So clearly people have to have the right, have to be qualified to get access to the system, but the information that's displayed is also meaningless to anyone who might come across it by mistake.
And Phil, there's one, is this SAP compatible?
Yes, it is. It's compatible with every ERP system that we've ever encountered, SAP, Oracle, Lawson, you name. You could go back to MSA. It's compatible with them as well.
And they want to know, can vendors load their initial information, name, address, EIN, and et cetera, into this interface?
Yes. There is a great opportunity for vendor onboarding that can help eliminate paperwork on the back end.
Okay, they also want to know, is the cost by volume, system time, or both? And then do customers have to pay a fee to use the portal?
The customers do not pay a fee to use the portal. The pricing is an annual pricing that's based on the anticipated number of invoices that are loaded into the system for display and the number of vendors, and the people who do the inquiry don't have to pay for it. So what's happening is AP is actually paying for it, or the host company is paying for it. The benefit is that it's providing high levels of service to their internal and external customers and vendors, and hopefully freeing up some folks in AP to do something more productive.
Okay, someone else wants to know, does this interface integrate and or download into from Great Plains?
Yes, indeed it does.
And on the invoice payment information, it only refers to check and check number. We pay most of our vendors by ACH or wire. Will that information be available?
Absolutely it is. One of the things that we could do for everybody on this call is, if you are interested and want to see a little more, we only had 25, 30 minutes, but if you want to see a little more in-depth overview of this, if you'll shoot me an email or shoot Anna an email, just let us know, and I can schedule some time when it would just be one-on-one, and we can actually bring it up and show it to you via WebEx, or actually let you dial into the system as well. So I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. What are some of the other fields to display? For example, if an invoice that reached its terms hasn't paid due to a credit, will that show the vendor?
We can, any field, there's a gazillion of them. Any field that you would like to display can be displayed. If you can, if the field is in your system and you can provide that field and the data for it, it can be displayed.
Okay, and someone else wants to know, is W-9 or W-8 validations done during the vendor onboarding?
Yeah, not the validation part. That is currently not being done. The information can be put up, particularly with W-8. There's some really interesting regulations around that. How that's validated really has to be done right now on the back end. That could be something that we could look at down the road, but that is not being done today.
Okay, and what are some things that you can do to limit pushback from vendors going to the portal?
Our experience is the opposite. They love the portal. They really love the portal because they're getting their answers faster. If it's a salesperson and they're getting the information, they don't have to wait for it. If it's a collector, in most of the larger companies or companies where there are collectors' performance are rated by how much money they think they're going to get in, and the portal gives them a way to do that a lot more efficiently. We found that Inquirer believes has greater credibility with the information that shows up on the screen than they have from people giving them the exact same answer. Prior to starting the Accounts Payable Network, my team and I ran a pretty good-sized payment processing company called Paytech, and I guess we were processing about 100 million invoices a year for a couple of hundred large companies, very large, like Fortune 500 companies, and we developed this portal, and this goes back into the mid-90s. We developed a portal precursor of this just to free our processors up, and it was just amazing. The vendors loved it. Was one of the things that we got rated very highly on as a supplier with the vendors, was that the portal was there, it was up, it worked well, and it saved them an awful lot of time.
Okay, Phil, would you like to give the audience some final remarks before we close?
Thanks, Wendy. I just want to thank you all for being on the call today and listening to us. And listening to me and putting up with me. Thank you. If there is anything that we can do for you, or anything that I can answer for you about this application or about Tappan in general, just please feel free to either shoot me an email or give me a call, and I'll get back with you. In the meantime, I hope you all have a very, very, very lovely day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and that's all the time we have for today's program. So any questions submitted but not addressed during the Q&A section will be addressed via email. That would conclude today's program, Vendor Self-Service Portals, Improve Customer Service and Productivity, Lower Costs, presented by Phil Binko and brought to you by the Accounts Payable Network. Thanks for attending today's webinar, and this webinar earns a half of CEU credits for the AP certification program, and today's program is copyrighted 2013 by the Accounts Payable Network. All rights reserved. We thank you all again for joining us.